Hi everyone! So today I'm doing a video on how to do this Christmas mani. For this mani, I'm going to be using Sleigh Bells Ring, which is our silver glitter, Glisten, which is our white shimmer, Christmas Party, which is a nice Christmas green, Illuminate, which is our clear glow in the dark that glows purple, and then I'm going to use clear powder to encapsulate everything. Okay, so here's what the mani is going to look like. Christmas Party on these 3 fingers, Glisten with a little bit of Sleigh Bells Ring, and then Sleigh Bells Ring on my pinky. So I'm gonna start as always by prepping my nails. I just took my last mani off and I washed with some dish soap and let them dry for at least 10 minutes. And then I'm gonna go ahead and push my cuticles back. And this should not hurt, you just want to lightly push them back so that they're out of the way and off your nail bed. And the reason you want them off your nail bed is because when you go to dip powder your nails, if they're on your nail bed and you get dip powder over them, then as that dip powder grows out, it will be lifted on the very edge. And then the lifting causes it to not be as strong and not last as long. Okay, and then after we finish pushing back all of our cuticles, we're going to lightly buff our nails. Now, since I just soaked mine off in acetone, they're already pretty dry and they're not shiny since I had just done my last mani about a week ago. But what you want to do is just lightly buff any shine on your nail. So where I had new growth since last time is a little shiny right here. So I'm going to go ahead and lightly buff that area. Once again, not pushing hard because I don't want to file off too much of my natural nail. And today I'm doing my mani using my non-dominant hand, which took me a little bit of practice when I first started doing this, but over time I kind of figured out tips that work for me. But that might be why I look like I'm holding things a little bit differently than normal. Okay, so then after buffing, I use a toothbrush, or you can also use the normal dip powder brush to get off any extra powder. Because you don't want that nail dust on your nail when you go to start dipping. Okay, so now we can move on to applying dip powder. So I'm going to start with my first color, which I'm going to start with my pinky with Sleigh Bells Ring. And this is our really nice silver glitter that is super shiny and pretty. I'm going to make sure to kind of shake everything up because sometimes glitter can settle. And I want a nice even glitter spread on my nail. Okay, and with that ready to go, I'm then going to grab my number 1, which is the base coat. And with the base coat, it is important to do really, really thin layers on your finger before dipping. So especially for my pinky, I don't put much liquid on the brush. And then I'm going to cover most of my nail, making sure not to get too close to the cuticle. Oftentimes for the first layer, I just do 3/4 of my nail. That way nothing builds up along the cuticle line. Okay, and now I'm going to dip into the glitter, and I'm going to do a flat dip, which is where you turn your finger over and dip it flat into the powder. And oftentimes that helps with glitter to get a nice even coverage. Sometimes if you dip it in the normal 45-degree angle, the glitter might get pushed off the tip of your nail and not stick properly. Just gonna tap that off. And then I'm going to grab the orange stick and just lightly go around the cuticle line to clean it up. It takes a little bit of time, probably about 10 seconds for the liquid to dry. So you have a little bit of time to brush off any dip powder and liquid that may have gotten too close to your cuticle or onto your skin. Okay. I'm gonna make sure that's dry. And then I'm gonna brush off using this super cute brush. I'm gonna brush off any extra dip powder on my fingernail. You wanna make sure to wait a few seconds for it to dry. So if you brush either too hard or too close to when you applied the liquid, it can actually brush off the color. And then we're gonna go in for our second dip of Sleigh Bells ring on our pinky finger. I typically do 3 layers of color on each finger. And this time I'm going to go down a little bit further, almost to my cuticle line, but making sure not to touch it. Okay, once again, we're going to flip our finger over to do that flat dip into our glitter. Tap off any excess. Now, as you can see, it's a nice even spread where my whole entire nail is covered evenly with the dip powder glitter. I'm going to get my orange stick. Just lightly going around my cuticle line. Brushing off any excess. Now we can go in for our third and final coat of Sleigh Bells ring. Making sure not to use too much liquid. If you get too much liquid on your nail, it kind of gets pushed back when you dip it into the powder and can get really clumpy and uneven looking. I'm going to flip my finger over to flat dip into the glitter. Okay, so now I'm going to put this color to the side. We're going to be using it again in a second. Now for my ring finger, I did a layer or 3 layers of glisten and then a little bit of Sleigh Bells ring. So we're going to do the 3 layers of glisten right now. And glisten is our nice white shimmer dip powder. I don't know if you can see the shimmer. It's really, really pretty. So I'm also going to kind of shake this one up in case any of the shimmer pigment settled. Okay, and then using my number 1, I'm going to lightly coat my ring finger about 3/4 of the way to the cuticle. And I'm going to dip the normal way at a 45-degree angle into the powder and then tap off all the excess. And then I'm going to get my orange stick and just run it along the cuticle line. So as you can see, it's a nice even coverage and it's laying nice and flat on my nail. And I was able to achieve that by using the nice thin layers of the liquid and making sure the powder was loosened up and dipping at a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to brush off any excess powder and then we can go in for our second layer. And this time I'm going really close to the cuticle line, but not quite touching it. Okay, now I'm going to dip it at a 45-degree angle into the powder and tap off all the excess. Okay, and here's what it looks like after the second dip. I'm going to go ahead and do a third dip, just to get a nice coverage of the powder and to get a nice color to where it's not too transparent. Okay, so now we have 3 layers of glisten on our ring finger. I'm going to brush off any extra powder. I'm going to go ahead and put glisten away because we are done with it. And I'm going to pull Sleigh Belle's ring back out. So we're going to do the fun part, putting a little bit of glitter on here. I'm going to grab a new brush. So we're going to use the brush to pick up a little bit of the glitter and put it on our nail. So I'm going to go in with number 1, and I'm just going to cover like the bottom quarter of my nail, because we only want glitter right at the bottom. Then I'm going to grab some glitter onto this brush and just lightly tap right over the bottom of my nail. I'm going to tap off any excess and use that orange stick. I love it. So we have that nice white color with just a little bit of sparkle at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put Sleigh Belle's ring away. And then we can brush off any of this extra powder. And now it's time for Christmas party. And this is our super fun Christmas green. And I'm going to be doing 3 layers of Christmas party on each of these fingers. I'm going to get my number 1 out. I'm going to do a nice thin layer on my thumb, going about 3/4 of the way to the cuticle line. then dipping at a 45-degree angle. Tapping off any excess. And I'm going to go around my whole cuticle line with the orange stick to clean up any powder and liquid that may have gotten onto my skin. Okay, now I'm going to do that same thing to my pointer finger. I have a little hair that got stuck on my nail. Okay. And then dipping at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure that they're dry, and I'm going to brush off any excess powder, and then we can go in for our second layer of Christmas party. And with our second layer, we're going to go all the way to the cuticle line. And how I apply my second layer of liquid is I cover up the part that already has powder on it first before going to the new area of my nail, because the powder kind of absorbs some of the liquid. Have a little bit of extra dip powder on my orange stick, so I'm gonna use a buffing block to just kind of buff that off so I still have a nice sharp point to clean up our cuticles. Okay. So now we're about to start our third layer of Christmas party. Okay, so now I'm gonna clean up my cuticle line using the orange stick. And I accidentally added a little bit too much liquid to this thumb. So here's that wave I was talking about, right up here at the tip, where if you get too much liquid, it kind of pushes, the powder will push that liquid back, making a wave. So I'm just gonna kind of see if I can pat it down a little bit. Still kind of wet. And I really used a lot of liquid. Okay, that looks a little better. Okay, now for the third layer of Christmas Party on our pointer finger. Making sure not to use as much liquid so we can get a nice thin, even layer. Okay, I'm just going to shake the powder a little bit to loosen it up, and then dip at a 45-degree angle. Tapping off any excess powder back into the jar, and then going in with my orange stick to clean up the cuticle line. Okay, and so that was our third and final layer of Christmas Party, so I'm going to go ahead and put that powder away. And now we get to move on to the really fun part, which is doing a layer of Illuminate over our mani. And this is our clear glow in the dark that will make these glow in the dark later, which is super exciting. So first I am going to brush off the excess powder from my nails. And before I add clear or the clear glow in the dark, I always make sure to really brush off any extra powder. So I'm going to make sure these are nice and dry. And then I'm going to go in with the toothbrush. And the toothbrush, I feel like, does an even better job than the brush of getting excess powder off. You just have to make sure your nails are not wet at all. So that's why I don't use this between each step. Okay. So I'm going to shake up Illuminate so it's nice and loose and ready for dipping. Okay. So I'm just going to do a nice light layer on all of the nails. And after dipping into Illuminate or a clear dip powder, your nail will kind of look foggy at first. But this will get better after we brush off the excess powder and activate. So it's just temporary, I promise. Okay, moving on to our next one. And I'm going to put this away. If you want it to glow extra, you can do more than one color or more than one layer of Illuminate. But I'm just going to stick with one, and then I'm going to get our clear out. This is just clear dip powder to encapsulate everything. Also, that way we have a layer of clear on top of our nails so that when we go to buff, we are not buffing off any color or any of the glow in the dark. I'm going to get that toothbrush back out again before we do the layer of clear to make sure there's not any dip powder just sticking out on our nail. Okay, so this looks just like Illuminate, but this one's just clear, no glow to it. And we're going to do the same process of one thin layer on all of our nails. Okay, so I'm just going to let my nails dry for a second while I put this clear away. Okay, I'm going to lightly brush off any excess dip powder. Okay, now we can move on to using our number 2, which is our activator. And the activator is what activates the dip powder and hardens it so that we can go in and buff. With the activator, You could just really apply it liberally so that it soaks into each nail. And I make sure to get the whole nail bed around the cuticle line and the tip of my nail. Wait for 2 minutes. And then we can go on to buffing. Okay, so now that it's been about 2 minutes since the activator, I'm gonna go ahead and buff my nails. I'm gonna start by using the buffing block and just lightly go over the bed of my nail to make sure it's nice and smooth. So on this thumbnail, it's going to take me a little bit longer to buff because the surface is a little uneven ever since I got that wave of my third layer. It kind of made every layer of the glow in the dark and the clear a little uneven. So I just have to buff that out. And you can kind of tell when it's uneven because you have dark spots. When something's buffed, it'll be this lighter color. Okay, so now I've got that buffed out. It's all nice and smooth and even. So now we can move on to our next nail. Okay, so now that I've used the buffing block on each of my nails, I'm going to go ahead and grab the file. I'm going to use the softer side and go along the edges of my nail. I want to make sure the edges of my nail are nice and smooth and that they don't have any sharp drop-off edges, because those edges can kind of get pushed over time and start to lift and cause a weak spot in your dip powder. Smoothing the edges also makes it look a lot prettier and more natural and not as bulky. And after I do the sides, I'm going to lightly file the top. And you can do a little bit of shaping if you want. Generally, if I want to take a lot of length off or really change the shape of my nail, I do that before the dip powder because it's just a little bit easier. Okay, so now I'm just gonna kind of look over everything and make sure I like how it looks, including the shape of my nail, that it matches the other hand, and that everything is nice and smooth. Okay, so now that everything is buffed and shaped, I'm gonna use my toothbrush or the fluffy dip powder brush and get all of that dust off my fingers. And then I'm gonna go in with my number 2 again, and I'm gonna coat all of my nails. And with the number 2, you can really see that nice cuticle line coming out. And you can see how well you kind of shaped everything. So this is one of my favorite parts, because everything goes from looking kind of dull and dusty to nice and bright. Okay, so now we're gonna wait exactly 1 minute before applying our number 3 top coat. And this is the really important step where you have to follow the timeline. You also need to get a paper towel. And what we're gonna do after 1 minute from applying that activator is we're going to wipe any excess activator off of each nail. And this is because the activator activates our top coat. So if you have too much activator on your nail and you go to put the top coat on, it can harden the top coat that's on your brush, or if it's still on your brush and you put that brush back in your top coat number 3 bottle, it will harden all of that liquid in the bottle. So this is a super important step. And of course, the activator also activates the top coat that you put on your nail, which is what makes it nice and shiny and dry. Okay, so it's been about a minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my paper towel out and use a nice clean side to wipe each of my nails. And this is just getting any excess activator off of the nail that may be sitting on there. Okay. So I wiped the activator onto this side, so I'm gonna flip it over. And this is what I'm gonna wipe my number 3 top coat brush on before putting it back into the bottle. So here's my number 3. And we're gonna do 2 layers of number 3. The first layer is really fast, and you're just kind of doing 3 quick strokes on each nail. You don't want to go too slow because that activator could harden the top coat that's on your brush. And I'm going to make sure to wipe my brush before putting it back into the bottle. Okay, so now I have my first layer of top coat on each nail. And then I'm gonna go right in with my second coat. With the second coat, you can take your time and be more precise with it. And you also wanna make sure to seal the edge of your nail. So after I apply the second coat everywhere, I'm then going to swipe along the tip of my nail to seal that edge. Making sure to wipe my brush on this paper towel before putting it back into the bottle every single time. Okay, so now we have 2 layers of our top coat on. This just takes a few minutes to dry. I normally just leave it alone and don't touch it for 3 to 5 minutes. But look at how shiny. I just love these liquids and how shiny they make your dip nails. They're also so easy to use. So pretty. All right. Well, I hope you liked this video, and I'm excited to see all of y'all's manis. Thank you for watching.